All right, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another Zoids review. So, I am back with yet another brand new product line that I've never reviewed before. This is the Zoids AZ, which stands for Advanced Zoid, but it also could be interpreted as Anniversary Zoid. We'll talk about that. And this, of course, is the Blade Liger. It is the Leon Toros version, the red version. And this apparently was a limited release in Japan, but some vendors stateside have been able to get their hands on it. And I actually found this from a vendor at MomoCon here in Atlanta. And the craziest thing happened to me at this MomoCon regarding this Zoid. So I was looking through a booth that always sells import games and Japanese art books and things like that. It's one of my favorite booths to look at these conventions because it usually shows up at every Anime Weekend Atlanta and every MomoCon. And someone approached me. I was not in cosplay or anything like that. And he asked me, he's like, "Are you the guy that makes the Zoids videos?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. How do you know that?" And he mentioned having seen the video that I did with Brad or Tagamales with his collection up there in Tennessee. And I guess from what it sounded like, he literally just stumbled upon my videos and remembered that I lived in this area because I talked about stores like Win Condition and Steel Collectibles and stuff like that. And he wasn't somebody that knew me from like the MomoCon Facebook group or know me through other people. It wasn't somebody who knew me through like the Zoids Collectors Facebook group or anything like that. It was just somebody who had naturally found my videos and then found me in the wild. And I was flabbergasted. I've never had that happen before, but it was super, super cool. And he was carrying with him a bag which contained inside the realized model Genosaur and also the AZ Saber Tiger. And so he had already been purchasing Zoids at this dealer's room, and I hadn't made it that far yet. So he told me about which booth they were at, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check out that booth. And they had a pretty good selection. They had the RMZ Genosaur, like he had. They had the HMM Riddler, which I haven't picked up yet. But most importantly, they had this. And as you guys know, the Red Blade Liger is my all-time favorite Zoid. I had a lot of nostalgia fueled FOMO because I missed out on the Red Blade Liger as a kid. I remember being in specifically a Kmart. Yes, a Kmart. And seeing it on the shelf and passing it up and never being able to find it in the wild again, and then seeing it go for like ridiculous prices online. I finally bought it secondhand from another collector in 2018 and did that video on the Red Blade Liger back then. And pretty soon after that, I think for my birthday of that year, I managed to track down the second printing of the HMM Red Blade Liger, not the version that has like the weird white trim around the canopy, not that first printing, but the one with the new box art, but still is the Leon version. And I did a video on that. I built that Red Blade Liger as one of the first Zoids I built in 2020 after me and my wife purchased our house and we moved in, and I started getting into my backlog after having my collection set up. So fast forward 5 years later, and here I am once again building another Red Blade Liger, and this is the AZ version. So all right, I know you've already typed your comment saying his front canines are missing. What'd you do? Yes, they fell out at some point when I was assembling his face. So he did not have his front teeth for the video. I'm fixing that now. And I just want to show what a pain in the ass it is to reassemble his head. I had to completely take the entire freaking thing apart just to be able to get this piece in there and get the head to reattach. Fiddly as hell. Super annoying. There we go. Front fangs are in there. That's what it's supposed to look like. The box is massive. I can barely fit it in the frame here. And this is a thick box. It's tall. It has pretty nice artwork on it. I do like that this is a nice, like, sturdy box that is completely enclosed. It's not a box that has like a clamshell that comes off of it like the HMMs and the RMZ Zoids do. So that's an interesting touch. And to kind of talk about, also, I guess before I talk about the line itself, talk about this experience buying it. So this booth had it for about $80, which is, I think, a fair price for it. Is about what they go for. It's what you can expect to pay for a lot of these AZ Zoids. They're comparably priced to the HMMs. although they're going for a very different design mythos. These are motorized kits very similar to the original Takara Tomy and Hasbro kits from the 80s and the early 90s, or I'm sorry, the 80s, late 90s, and early 2000s. And but they've been completely redesigned. They share no parts with any of the previous motorized kits, aside from the fact that they use the Masterpiece Zoids line as a template, and they've kind of been built off of that. So currently, the project was for the 40th anniversary of Zoids, which would have been in 2024. Actually, no, it would have been in 2022. Yeah, 2022 would have been the 40th anniversary when this project initially started, but a lot of the products that were announced for the 40th anniversary did not come out for a few years because they started production that year for the 40th anniversary and didn't actually hit retail or anything like that until a few years later after they got through the prototype phase and manufacturing and all that. So 40th anniversary was 2022. A lot of the products we got afterwards. I got my 40th anniversary t-shirt. Shout outs to Brad Ortega Malice for securing that for me. And we started getting these AZ Zoids. So I wasn't sure how I felt about them at first, but now I finally have one in hand. And I understand the kind of point behind the product line a little bit better. And this is going to be a very, very in-depth review, by the way. I have a lot to say about this guy. So, the existing AZ Zoids are sort of based around this sort of the anniversary, going through the years of the different Zoids product lines and anime series, and it's sort of a celebration of Zoids from throughout the years. So the main thing they wanted to do was to highlight each of the different protagonists from Chaotic Century, New Century Zero, and Fusers, and Genesis, and not Wild, unfortunately. I guess the Wild Zoids were too new and didn't really need to be reimagined outside of the HMM line. So we got the blue Van Blade Liger, of course. We got a Saber Tiger. We got the Liger Zero. We got the Liger Zero Phoenix. And we got the Murasame Ligers. We kind of went through the different generations, so to speak. There's obviously some variants on those. So one of the special variants is, of course, they already made the Blade Liger, so why not just recast the plastic in red and re-release it as the Leon version? So we got this version. And then the same thing with the Phoenix for the Liger Zero Phoenix. They're re-releasing that as a limited edition kit, only available at certain stores in Japan, as in this Republic Blue color to kind of fit the battle story a little bit more. And so you can have the Liger Zero Phoenix in blue. And that is something I'm definitely interested in picking up if I can find it. They also did a limited edition Shield Liger. They also did a limited edition Liger Zero in a sort of like off-white blue color that is meant to be Ray Gregg's Liger Zero from the battle story, which I think is super cool that they did that. And so, again, if I can find that, maybe I'll have that as my base Liger Zero, and then get the Republic Phoenix to go with it and have the Liger Zero Phoenix, because I do not own a Liger Zero Phoenix in any capacity. And they are, again, my conspiracy theory is that they are not able to do any of the Fusers Zoids in the HMM line because they don't have the rights to it. Same thing with Genesis and any of the anime characters. They're only able to use the original battle story. So the Liger Zero Phoenix can only exist in this line that, Takara Tomy has full control over, so to speak, because they have the rights to the anime characters. That's why we got the RMZ Saber Tiger Shoebolt special, and that's why we're getting the Blade Liger Leon version here. So we also got the AZ Death Soarer, which is incredible because it is the first time we've ever had a new Death Soarer since the original. And it is an awesome looking kit. Brad has it. Next time I go to visit him and take a look at his collection, I'll hopefully be able to do a video on that. But it's not a kit I don't think I will be able to own because it's a little bit outside of my price range, and I don't have a whole lot of room to store it, unfortunately. But I couldn't pass up the Blade Liger. This was, again, a birthday gift for me this year, ironically enough, because I seem to get the red Blade Liger for my birthday like 3 times in a row now. And so Michelle, my wife, helped me split the cost of this so I could get it for my birthday at MomoCon. And let's go ahead and talk about this guy. So one thing that's really cool I want to show off is they do come with a stand which is really cool. The later Takara Tomy motorized kits came with stands. So the Fusers and Genesis era ones, you've seen me talk about it with the Race Tiger and the Brass Style Tiger have stands. And so I think it's a nice touch that it has a stand, although I just wanted to kind of show that off and take it off the stand. The other thing is this stand is partially necessary for construction, and I'll get to that. We'll go ahead and pop this off of there so he can stand on his own legs. All right, so in terms of the build complexity for this guy, it is a much more advanced version of the original motorized kit. So it is not nearly as complex as the HMM version, but there are a lot of additional pieces that you would not see on the original motorized version. So for instance, on the original motorized version, let me go ahead and grab it. The feet are just one solid piece. On the Hasbro red version, they're cast in plastic here, and on the Japanese blue Van Blade Liger, they're cast in die cast, which is really cool. And on the HMM version, you have to assemble each toe individually. Each toe is two separate pieces that sort of clamshell together with a little rubber pin on the inside, so they all kind of fit together and are individually articulated. The AZ version has a little bit of a compromise of the two designs, where each toe is an individual piece, but they fit together a little bit more easily. And so what this basically allows for is the feet kind of free float like this, so that when it walks with the motorized function, the feet can kind of form to the terrain of what it's walking on and not create this like shaky wobbly effect like the original had. That's the purpose of that. So the feet are not firmly locked in place, so they can kind of flow more naturally. And then when you pick him up, his feet kind of drop like that, like a real cat. It's kind of funny. But it does stand up pretty nicely under his own weight. The sides of the face here are a large piece, and that is something that is consistent with the original, with this version, and the HMM, where the whole side of the face is a pretty large piece. And I think if you were to show me those pieces just cut out with nothing attached to them, they would be pretty much indistinguishable from each other. So I think that's, kind of a cool attention to detail there. I really, really love how the fins up here fit into the face. They fit in incredibly snug, whereas the HMM version, they attach on weird sockets in there, and they sort of free float in there, and they have a little bit of motion to them, which is kind of cool. They have motion, but it gives me a lot of concerns about the build quality, and so I like that those kind of slide in there very securely. I like that quite a bit. Overall, I really do like, for the most part, the modernized, enhanced details. It is a very different take on the Blade Liger from what we've seen before. Some of the details I can take or leave, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I'll give you some good examples and some bad examples. So looking at the side profile, the way that the vents on the side here that deploy the shield and allow the blades to flip down, they're very thick, and they flourish out in a very stylistic way, and I think that looks very, very cool, especially compared to the original and how kind of boring the original looks by comparison. Very, very nice detail there. However, up here at the top of his head, this fin that flips forward when the shield is deployed is like ridiculously small. It's small compared to the original, and it's small compared to the HMM version, which has my favorite look for that piece. The HMM version like fills out the shape of the head a lot better. Same thing with the bottom flap down there. The bottom flap on mine attaches to a rounded piece down here by the cannon. I know the light's not particularly good, but I wanted to make sure I got the color good in this video, so I don't have a whole lot of light down there, and I apologize. But the two pins that would secure this bottom flap to the rest of the head, it's just the spacing is not correct, so you'd have to like force the plastic down like that, and it doesn't pin in anywhere. And I just think that sucks. I think that looks bad. It does move independently without needing to be attached to the rest of the head, but I just think it looks bad. I think it sucks. And I also think it comes really close to the cannon. And the cannon itself, I'll flip him upside down so you can see this. The cannon also sucks. It's a tiny little piece. The barrels are small and undefined. It just clips onto the front of a piece that is molded into the motor piece on the bottom. And that's an interesting way of doing that. Maybe they did that by necessity because the motor is such an integral part of this version of the kit. But it just looks lame. And even if you compare that to the original motorized version, which, you know, without needless to say, it has a motor, the cannon is big and defined. It's a nice, big, stout piece down there that's its own separate piece. And, you know, the HMM version, the cannon looks, you know, big and defined and everything. So I think the underslung cannon on the AZ version is just really bad and ill-considered. I don't like the way it looks at all. But some other pros, I think the teeth look really nice. I do like that they're all gold, although I do wish that this was a nice reflective metallic gold. It is a nicer looking gold than the dull gold on the HMM, but I still would have liked it if it was closer to the die-cast color of the Takara Tomy Blue Blade Liger. But the original Hasbro one here, only the two fangs, and only the fangs are really colored, and the rest are just that molded in red plastic to match the rest of the head, so that's kind of lame. I also love the shape of the cockpit. It's a little bit more of an anime-accurate cockpit compared to the other versions of the kit. And the hinge that opens the canopy here, there's a hinge here and a hinge here. So it moves in at two different points of articulation. It flips open like that, and it flips open like that, which is really cool. And I like that because it gives you a little bit more of a range of motion to make sure that the canopy is secured down on top of it. A little bit more leverage. It's hard to really explain unless you have it in your hands. But an issue with the original version is the cockpit canopy doesn't fit super snug on there. Another thing is, so the way these guys are built, I did not go over this quite yet, is you start with the motor, and then you build the skeleton underneath. So you're building like a naked, raw Zoid on top of the motor. And that does create a nice stylistic look. Basically what you're doing is attaching pieces to either side of the motor like this, and then there are pieces that are dedicated pins that slide onto the center of those two pieces, securing them to the motor. Very straightforward, very intuitive, very similar to the old motorized kits, but a little bit more stylized. Nothing at all like the HMMs. Completely different from the HMMs. And so that's how you're building the skeleton underneath, and I'll show some pictures of what that looks like without the armor. That does result in a couple of cool things, so I do like that. Underneath, when we flip up the cockpit here again, you can see the eyes in there. So this is the first and only version of the Blade Liger to have proper eyes. And you can see the like skeletal head under there where the cockpit is. Now, strangely enough, the part where the little Leon figure that it does include, a little unpainted Leon figure, it sits on a piece of translucent plastic. So the whole cockpit is translucent under there in order to create the eyes feature over here, which is a little bit strange. It also has an articulated throttle thing for the controls that comes down onto him, similar to the Command Wolf. So that's cool. And the fact that there's so much black plastic in here makes the cockpit look better than the original, whereas the original, what is underneath that translucent orange is just more red. So it doesn't allow those details to pop out, and it gives the orange translucent plastic a very strange look on the original, whereas here on this version, it looks really, really nice. I do like that aspect of it quite a bit. Kind of moving on down this guy, I do like the shell, that kind of the cover of the boosters back here. It's a nice, dense, thick, stout piece, and it's bigger and more defined than any of the other two versions. I think it most matches the original motorized version, but it makes the HMM version's cover look downright ugly by comparison. So that is one thing I will say, like stylistically, this looks nicer than even the HMM version. But I don't really like how far forward on the Blade Liger's back the boosters are. I feel like he has a very long body with some gaps in the middle here, where his hind legs are set very, very, very far back, and the boosters are like right at the top of his neck there. And I feel like the other two versions have a lot more room there. So we'll flip that up and we'll show off the boosters. It is really, the boosters look cool, and they swivel on a pin here. So if for any reason you had to do like a sideways dash with the boosters, you could kind of simulate that with the way they move. And they flip up and down very nicely, and they tuck under there very securely. Overall, very well made. But I do like how the other versions have that little track that the boosters run on. I can kind of show that off with the original here. You flip this up, and the boosters are locked into the cover, so they cannot. The cover is kind of permanently attached to them, so to speak. And I dare not really mess with the HMM version's boosters, but I can kind of show you what they look like down there. So the boosters obviously are a lot more detailed in the HMM version, but that kind of goes without saying. The blades are super cool. I'm going to talk about this bit here shortly, but I do want to talk about the blades. So they're more similar to the original motorized version in the sense that you have one of the caps that goes through this red arm into the blade itself and secures it down. That is much more similar to the motorized version than to the HMM. And these do feel pretty nice and secure, which is really nice. The original motorized version had a lot of problems with the blades popping off, especially on my blue van version from Takara Tomy. But the blade itself is this really dense, thick piece of plastic with nice molded in details to it. These are the nicest looking blades of any version of the Blade Liger, bar none. The original looks fine, and the HMM version, what I like is they look very sharp. That is one thing that's really cool about the HMM version. But detail-wise, this is my favorite version of the Blade Liger's blades by far. But they do come down like this, but also there is this sliding joint right here for where the blades attach, so that when they're in rest mode, they kind of come down snug on the Blade Liger's back like that. They do not have the little resting cups that the HMM version does. I really like that feature in the HMM version because the blades come down and rest in a very particular place, and it makes it to where the blades look better on the back, whereas on the original, they kind of flop around back and forth. On this version, they don't have a nice resting place, but they do fit pretty snug because it kind of comes, the arm slides down and compresses down to where it's snug on the Blade Liger's back. But if you wanted some more action, it extends out. And the way this slide joint works, it's like a ratcheted thing on the inside where you can feel the slow tension of it as you're pulling on it. And it feels so cool. It is such a nice little detail. I love that piece. So yeah, the blades, very, very nice. They stick out very far. No doubt would make for some really nice pictures, some nice action poses and stuff like that. So very, very cool. Also, the tail. The tail has the white piece to kind of break up the complexion of it, whereas the HMM version, even the most detailed version, does not have that. It's just solid red on the HMM version. Maybe they meant you to fix that with decals on the HMM version, but it is cool to see one way in which the AZ version here is superior there. The AZ version does not include attack boosters, which I think is a huge downside because the attack boosters are one of my favorite parts of the Blade Liger, and I'm glad that pretty much every modern version of the HMM version includes attack boosters by default. Even if Leon never used the attack boosters in the anime, I'm very glad that the HMM version includes that. So, those are my pros out of the way. Now let's talk about my cons, because this is not going to be a strictly positive review, unfortunately. Some of this stuff is user error, some of it is growing pains, I will admit. But I do have some problems with this guy and with this line in general. So, you build the skeleton, like I mentioned. You basically attach a bunch of decorative and structural pieces onto the motor underneath, and then you start putting the armor on. But attaching the limbs onto this guy was a pain in the ass, because the AZ line has a unique design sensibility that was not existent in any other Zoids line prior to this, where the caps help to secure pieces in where, I can't really demonstrate it right now, but those of you who have built the line know what I'm talking about, where the caps they're not just decorative, they have a pin on the other side of it with two little prongs at the end, so they will fit through the hole only one way, and then you have to rotate them to lock them into place. Now, if you don't know you're supposed to rotate them, you are going to be trying to figure out how to keep all those pieces lined up on the leg. And so I had the guy on the stand just for stability to try to put the legs on there, because I was like, oh my God, these leg pieces are like crumbling in my hands because nothing is pinned in, nothing is secure. And then I looked at the instructions better and I was like, oh, you're supposed to rotate the caps to lock everything in. And so then I was trying to rotate them in by hand, and they weren't going far enough, so they were undoing themselves. So then I realized that they weren't going far enough, and I didn't realize until after completing this guy that there's a specific proprietary piece. I thought it was part of the stand. It is actually a wrench designed to go around the caps and rotate them in to lock them into place. I was using my model clippers or some pliers to rotate them into place, and this made for a very frustrating build. I won't lie. Part of that was me just not knowing that it used that design method, and I will know for next time I build one of these that is the case. But I'll give you some examples of where it is objectively not well designed. So up here, the front shoulders. So the only thing securing this piece of armor and this piece by extension to the leg is this small size black cap right here. And so there is nothing else pinning this in. On the other versions, both other versions, there are pins that will maybe here and here where my fingers are, where it snaps into the leg. This version, for whatever reason, just a cap. And so it results in, this is loose as hell. Why? That's very frustrating. Also, the vents that come out over here, they don't go out very far, and they can very easily pop off like this. And I don't manhandle my stuff, especially not Zoids, especially not model kits in general. But more so than any of the other versions, these things can just pop right off. This one that I'm playing with right now is the worst of the four, in my opinion. But I'm not doing anything wrong. It's snapped in exactly the way it is, but it's only like a little slot like this that goes around a peg in there, and it rotates around that peg. But it can just easily snap right off. The original version is more secure, and the HMM version is more secure because the HMM version has that rubber S-shaped peg on the inside where they can kind of swivel outward. And so on the HMM version, they go back like this and out, and they go all the way out. You get a nice range of motion on the HMM version, and they slide right back in. There's no issues at all, assuming you built it correctly. Really nice design sensibility there. But with these, they look nice, they look hella cool, but they can just snap right off if you're not careful, and they only go out about that far. And if you want to push it out any further than that, it will just kind of pop off. So I will say, as far as that pin goes, the front shoulders are much more loose than the back shoulders. The back, the hips seem to be a little bit more secure. But just one of these little caps there, and that's it. And it is secure. I did rotate it down correctly. That just seems silly, man. Like, I don't know that I like that a whole lot. So if I had to say my opinion about the build of this guy, it is mixed. I do not unequivocally love the build for these guys. It wasn't the most time-consuming build in the world. It was definitely a lot shorter than an HMM, but it was an order of magnitude more complex than the original motorized version. So this might be about 2 or 3 hours, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on when you start it and if you comprehend the specific design sensibility that they're going for with those caps. If you know that right off the bat, you'll have a much easier time with it. But if you have to learn that like I did, then it will probably take you a lot longer. So I think this collectively probably took me about 4 hours or so, and probably would have taken me less if I was going faster. But that was me struggling with it, putting it down, coming back to it later kind of thing. So it wasn't a linear 4 hours by a long shot. But overall, I am mostly positive about this guy. I think that this particular Zoid, the AZ Blade Liger, and the AZ line in general. Also, I didn't put batteries in this guy because it requires AAAs. I don't have any AAAs. And I tend not to want to put batteries in my Zoids anyway because I don't want to forget them and then disasters happen later. So you'll have to forgive me for not showing off the motorized function on this particular kit. There may be a day where I do like a motorized showcase where I put batteries in them and then immediately take them out for the sake of the video. But sorry, didn't pre-plan that far ahead for this, and I apologize. But I am mostly positive about this guy, but I do think that um, the design decisions made with the build are not 100% positive. I am critical of some of the design decisions and some of the aesthetic decisions as well. And so I don't think this will be my favorite version of the Blade Liger, but it is cool as hell, and I do love having it. So let's kind of quickly do the best job we can of comparing the three side by side here. So once again, we have the original 2002 Hasbro motorized red Blade Liger, which is technically a generic. It's not affiliated with Leon the anime, but we all know it's his. We have the 2018 HMM to Kotobukiya Master Model Leon Blade Liger, and we have the 2025 Takara Tomy T Spark AZ Red Blade Liger. And boy, what a lineup! These guys are so cool. So now that I think I have, now that I have the red AZ Blade Liger, I missed out on the blue one, the blue van one. I didn't pre-order or anything. I was a lot harder on money when it was coming out, and Win Condition got the blue Van Blade Liger twice, but they were charging $150 for it. I thought that was a little bit too much for what it was. But Brad did pick up one of the two that they had. I told him about it, and he's like, "I'm gonna go get it, dude. You snooze, you lose." And so he has one of those two, and so I will be able to kind of show that one off on video one day when I go back and look at his collection. And like I said, I do think he has more of these. I think he has the Liger Zero Phoenix, and I know he has the Death Soarer, so I will be taking a look at those in his collection. I would also like the Liger Zero Phoenix, and then there are a lot of other kits coming down the line for this. They are going to do a Shield Liger at some point. They're also doing some strange. They're doing a Mulga, so we'll have a Mulga for both this and the RMZ line. But they're also doing a. I don't remember the name of it. It's the sea something, but they're doing the little crab, the little hermit crab Zoid from the '80s line. They are doing in this line, which I think is really really cool and a nice little bit of representation. So they're being very clever. They're trying to pick the most iconic Zoids for the 40th anniversary, and then they're reimagining some lesser known ones that are still an important part of Zoids history. So I think this line is super cool, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it continue. I just may not buy a ton of them because, once again, I'm running out of room in my collection. I actually do not know where this guy is going to go at this point. So but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you bearing through this incredibly detailed review. I had a lot to say about this guy, and hopefully y'all enjoyed it. So I'll see you guys next time.